All right, let's get cooking. Welcome to the latest edition of Chin Check Sports Radio. I'm your host, JD. I want to thank you all for taking the time out to join us. And as always, we welcome any suggestions, feedback, comments, and criticisms, which improves the quality of our program, which ultimately improves your listening experience. On this particular episode, we want to talk about the legacy of New York Giants quarterback Eli Manning. Now, this was a program that we were working on before the untimely death of NBA legend Kobe Bryant. And we at Chin Check Radio are still mourning for the loss of Kobe Bryant. And we wish his family, as well as the families of all the other passengers on the helicopter, just a way for them to ease their pain. And that's our hearts, minds, prayers, sympathy, condolences. We express that to all the family here at Chin Check Radio. Now, quarterback Eli Manning leaves a very complicated legacy. Right now, the hot button issue is whether he is a Hall of Famer or not. People have given their opinions. Lines have been drawn in the sand. I know that some of my old friends back in New Jersey are going to be listening to this program. So to erupt, Lil Cuz in Minnesota, Big Warren, John, JJ, Tony. I know you guys will be listening as well as other people. And if I forgot some people, please forgive me. And I know it's going to make some people in New Jersey upset at the conclusion of this broadcast, but our response to that is, oh well, tough. We're going to give you the truth here at Chin Check Radio, and we're going to call it as we see it. Now, growing up in New Jersey as a Dallas Cowboys fan, needless to say, I have been in plenty of arguments, wars, backroom brawls, arguments at the gym, fighting over the Cowboys and the Giants. And if I can go back and do all over again, I would have done the same thing. Definitely some great times. So I was able to witness those battles between the Cowboys and the Giants with Eli Manning as quarterback. Definitely some great games, great times, great arguments. So we're going to do a quick review of the Giants seasons under Eli Manning, as well as their matchups with the Dallas Cowboys. So in 2004, Eli Manning is drafted, does not want to play for the San Diego Chargers, forces a trade to New York City. Then the Chargers then acquire the rights to quarterback Phillip Rivers out of NC State. The very next year, they use a pick in the Eli Manning trade to draft one Sean Merriman. So in 2004, Eli Manning actually was not the starter for that team. Future Hall of Famer Kurt Warner was. After a little bit of a losing streak, 2 games, they put Eli Manning in. Of course, the New York pressure, New York media, going to put Eli, what else do you have to lose? Eli Manning then loses 6 straight games, and in the season finale, defeats the Dallas Cowboys for his first win, 28-24. Now, that Dallas Cowboys team in 2004 was just a total abysmal failure. It started in the preseason training camp when quarterback Quincy Carter tested positive for cocaine, was promptly cut. Cowboys not having any option at quarterback. The defense is awful. Secondary was awful. They needed a complete overhaul of the football team. So 2 bad teams playing at the end of the season, and Eli Manning got his first professional win against the Dallas Cowboys. In 2005, the New York Giants finished up with a record of 11-5 for first in the NFC East. They lost in the wild card round to the Carolina Panthers, actually shut out at home 23-0. To a Carolina Panthers team who had Mike Rucker and Julius Peppers. In week 6 of that season, they lost on the road to the Dallas Cowboys 16-13, and in week 13, they avenged their loss 17-10. In 2006, the New York Giants, under Eli Manning, or led by Eli Manning, went 8-8 for third in the division, lost in the wild card round to the Philadelphia Eagles 23-20. In week 7, they dominated the Cowboys in Texas Stadium 36-22. Now, I was actually at that game. John, if you're listening, that's the game that we flew out for. And I remember the first quarter, Giants drove the ball. Eli Manning throws a deep pass to Plaxico Burress, and they were off to the races. Now, what's memorable about that game was actually quarterback Tony Romo's first meaningful live NFL action. Now, he's filled in garbage time in some other games, namely the Houston Texans. So this was the first time in a meaningful game that Romo saw action, because Drew Bledsoe, in another one of his head-scratching interceptions, throws interceptions on the 5-yard line to a pass intended by the late Terry Glenn. As the team takes the field in the second half, I and other Cowboys fans in the stands notice, well, wait a minute, is that Romo in the game? And that briefly energized the crowd, and Romo quickly throws an interception. So, yeah, I was there, and I remember like it was yesterday. So, of course, that score, 36-22, was not really indicative of how out of hand that game really was. And in Week 13, Cowboys get a measure of revenge, 23-20 at Giants Stadium. Now, what I remember about that game was a huge fourth down stop by linebacker DeMarcus Ware on a big, huge Brandon Jacobs, a big kick by Mike Vanderjagt, as well as Tony Romo ducking and dodging in the hole and finding a tight end in the end zone for a nice touchdown. What I do remember about that season was Sunday night, Week 10, playing the Chicago Bears. The Giants was actually dominating that game. What was a turning point of that game was a missed field goal that Devin Hester was standing in the end zone for, takes a missed field goal, kind of stands there for a second, lulls the Giants to sleep. Literally, their players are walking off the field, and it proceeds to race down the sideline. All you saw was Chicago Bears players knocking out New York Giants players, knocking them out of the TV screen and knocking them to the ground as Devin Hester races past him and scores a touchdown, and that blew the doors wide open. Now, that is the same Chicago Bears team in 2006 and ended up going to the Super Bowl. In 2007, the New York Giants finished up with a record 10-6, finishing second in the NFC East. In the wild card round, they defeated the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 24-14. They defeated the Dallas Cowboys 21-17 in the divisional round, defeated the Brett Favre Green Bay Packers 23-20, and defeated the New England Patriots in probably one of the biggest Super Bowl upsets of all time, 17-14. Now, in Week 1 of that season, when they played the Dallas Cowboys at the old Texas Stadium, that was Coach Wade Phillips' first game as head coach of the Cowboys at the retirement of Bill Parcells. That was Jason Garrett's first time as the offensive coordinator, who was now the New York Giants offensive coordinator. And the Cowboys win the game 45-35. In Week 11, in Giants Stadium, the Dallas Cowboys continued their domination of the New York Giants 31-20. Now, you would think those type of dominating victories, it should have been a cakewalk for the Dallas Cowboys, who was a number 1 seed that season. Of course, Cowboys fans, you know, that game was made infamous by the famous trip to Cabo, Mexico, by Tony Romo, ex-girlfriend Jessica Simpson, and Jason Witten during the bye week. And of course, people point to that trip as the reason for the loss, because the Cowboys were the first team, and they went 13-3 that season. They were the first team to lose as a number 1 seed in the divisional round under the new playoff format. Sad, isn't it? What's also notable is in Week 17 of that season, the New York Giants lost to the New England Patriots 38-35. And again, that was in Giants Stadium. So the Patriots actually was finishing up the regular season 16-0. And that was a game that Randy Moss caught the most touchdown passes in the season, breaking the old record by Jerry Rice. And I remember it was a deep ball. So I remember the one play, Tom Brady overthrew Randy Moss, and they came right back to the same play. Moss hauls it in. They scored a touchdown, and all type of records were set that game. Now, which I also believe might have been Tom Brady's 50th touchdown pass, which also set a record that season. Now, something from that game might have inspired the New York Giants, because that 2007 Patriots team, if they would have won that Super Bowl, they would clearly have been the greatest team ever. I remember watching that team, and they were destroying everybody. The only tough games they played was against the Baltimore Ravens on a Monday night, and that game against the Giants to end the season. So Giants received some inspiration. Their defensive line, I thought, took control of the game. Eli Manning with the famous David Tyree one-handed catch and the wide open pass of Pascal Burress. if you guys go back and watch the NFL Football Life on Rodney Harrison, I thought he really gives an in-depth play-by-play as to that final series and what cost him the Super Bowl. So Eli Manning wins the Super Bowl MVP. Giants with one of the biggest upsets in Super Bowl history, leads the team in Super Bowl 42. In 2008, the defending Super Bowl champions finish up 12-4, first in the NFC East, but they lose in the divisional round 23-11 to the Philadelphia Eagles. In Week 9 of that season, they dominate the Cowboys 35-14 in Giants Stadium. And in Week 15, 20-8, road loss. In 2009, the New York Giants, they finish up 8-8, do not qualify for the playoffs. And believe it or not, that is the first season of what we know now as AT&T Stadium, which is back then was Cowboys Stadium or Jerry World or Jerry's Palace. And in Week 2 of that season, they promptly lose to the New York Giants 33-31 to christen the new stadium. And in Week 13 of that season, I was actually at that game again with John in the old Giants Stadium. And the Cowboys again lost that game 31-24. So the New York Giants swept the Cowboys that season, but did not qualify for the playoffs. In 2010, the New York Giants finish up 10-6. But again, they don't qualify for the playoffs. Week 7, Monday night, they defeated the Cowboys 41-35. And that game was infamous because Tony Romo broke his clavicle, was the first of many clavicle breaks. And actually, when they played him again that season, was actually Jason Garrett's first time as coach because he had fired Wade Phillips. Cowboys lost a bunch of games. And in a shocking upset, the Dallas Cowboys defeated the New York Giants 33-20, actually on the road at Giants Stadium. In 2011, the Giants first in the NFC East, 9-7. In the wild card game, they defeated the Atlanta Falcons 24-2. They defeated the Green Bay Packers, who were the defending Super Bowl champions at that time, 37-20. And they defeated the San Francisco 49ers in San Francisco in the NFC Championship game, and once again defeated the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl in Super Bowl 46, 21-17, famous by another Eli Manning throw to Mario Manningham. I mean, great throw, great catch, and of course people got on the Wes Walker drop pass, well, I think Tom Brady overthrow, quite frankly. So people blame that. In Week 14 of that season, they defeated the Cowboys in Dallas 37-34, actually a great game. And in Week 17, with the division on the line, they defeated the Cowboys 31-14, who was actually an awful football team even in 2011. In 2012, the Giants go 9-7, finishing second in the division, do not make the playoffs. In Week 1, they lose 24-17 to the Cowboys. And that was the first time a Super Bowl winner lost their opening home game. I think that hadn't been done, since the 1999 Broncos, if I'm not mistaken, or the 98 Broncos. And I remember that game. I remember that was the first I noticed how good DeMarco Murray could be. In Week 8, Giants get a measure of revenge, defeating the Cowboys 29-24 at Dallas. Now, what I do remember about that game was Tony Romo threw the ball 66 times. And the reason why he threw the ball 66 times because the Cowboys were behind. The reason why the Cowboys were behind because when he threw the ball, he was throwing some picks. And there was a Hail Mary play where Dez Bryant got behind the safety, goes up for the football, catches it in the end zone. As Dez comes down, literally his fingertips are out of bounds. It's the first thing that lands are his fingertips out of bounds. Maybe that should have been a precursor to what Dez Bryant's career would be, because if you know, that's the famous catch, no catch. But I remember that game, and I remember going crazy. I remember losing my mind that Dez made the catch. And when they, of course, with instant replay, they were able to zoom in, and literally his fingertips were on the white in the back of the end zone, and the Cowboys lost that game. In 2013, the New York Giants finished 7-9 for third in the NFC East. They lose a Week 1 matchup to the Dallas Cowboys, 36-31, and lose again to the Cowboys Week 12, 24-21. In 2015, the New York Giants finish up 6-10, third in the division, no playoffs. Week 7, they lose at Dallas, 31-21, and in Week 12, they lose to the Cowboys, 31-28 in MetLife Stadium. Now, that game in 2014, especially the one at MetLife Stadium, is a game made famous by the Odell Beckham catch. Of course, that's what made Odell a star. That's the game we know Odell from. And I crack up because I remember Giants fans were calling me, "Hey, did you see that catch? Did you see that catch? Did you see the catch?" And I said, "But did you see the final score of the game?" Because actually, the Giants at one point were leading Cowboys 21-10. That's in the third quarter. And the Cowboys came back and won that game. And what actually ended the game was a huge stop by former Cowboy linebacker Rolando McClain, who made a huge stop on a fourth down, stopped the guy about a yard short, and Cowboys ended up winning that game. So people talk about, hey, the Odell Beckham catch. Personally, I don't know why it wasn't pass interference on Odell Beckham, but they called pass interference on Brandon Carr. So the greatest catch of all time actually resulted in a loss, but that's none of my business. I don't even know I brought that up. In 2015, the Giants go 6-10. 2015, they go 6-10, finish up third in the division. Week 1 at the Cowboys lose 27-26. A last-minute touchdown from Romo to Jason Witten, which you remember that. Go back, if you guys want to Google a clip of Dez Bryant goes nuts after the game. He fractured a bone in his foot, or he cracked a bone in his foot. He was in the locker room. Of course, he's excited as the team comes out. And Dez is pretty much in his biking short Speedos, comes out and he's screaming, yes, yes, and what, and he's hyped up. And, of course, he's limping as he's celebrating with the team. So that was kind of a funny thing. And you could look the clip up on YouTube. They defeat the Cowboys in MetLife Stadium, 27-20, later on that season. In 2016, Giants finish up 11-5, second in the division. They lose the wild card game to the Green Bay Packers. Now, what's most notable about that game is Odell Beckham took the receiving crew down to Miami, Florida on a little boat trip before you play in the cold weather in Green Bay. Now, I remember that Odell Beckham dropped a lot of passes. He did not have a great game. There was a Hail Mary at the end of the first half of that game. So definitely New York Giants went to the playoffs, but lost to the Aaron Rodgers-led Green Bay Packers. Now, they defeated the Cowboys twice that season. The first one was Week 1, 2019, which was the rookie season of Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott. Now, that was their first game. That was after Tony Romo was hurt against Seattle in the preseason. Dak Prescott showed some promise. They had Ezekiel Elliott, who drafted in the first round, number 4. Dak Prescott was a 4th-round pick. Very tight game, 2019. And in MetLife Stadium, beginning of December of that season, Cowboys lost 10-7, which the 10, that was a touchdown from Odell Beckham. He just outran Brandon Carr. So that season, the Dallas Cowboys in 2016 went 13-3, but their 2 losses were to the New York Giants. And of course, the Giants lost to the Packers in that wild card game. In 2017, they finish up 3-13 for last in the division, lost in Week 1 to the Dallas Cowboys, 19-3, and get blown out at MetLife Stadium, 30-10. In 2018, Giants finish up 5-11, lose to the Dallas Cowboys, 2013 at Dallas, and lose again in New York, 36-35, in the season finale in 2018. And in Week 1 of this past season, Week 1 at Dallas, the last time Eli Manning played against the Cowboys, 35-17 loss. Now, we've given you the blow-by-blow of all the seasons that Eli Manning was a quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. And if you have been keeping count, and we have tallied the scores up, now the argument goes to whether he should or he should not be a Hall of Famer. But before we get to that, my New York Giants fans, let me tell you some harsh reality. You people did not appreciate Eli Manning. Go on and cut the music. You people, yes, I said you people, did not appreciate Eli Manning, and here's why. Because you Giants fans, and you know, based on conversation that we have had, you were so ready to bail on Eli Manning before that first Super Bowl. You guys were saying he doesn't show any emotion. His mouth is wide open. He looks like a doofus out there. He has no emotion. We wish he showed emotion. Because at the time I was living in New Jersey, I used to listen to sports talk radio daily. And that was a criticism of Eli Manning. Tiki Barber made comments about him. Other players made comments about him. The fans were saying he looks like a doofus. He doesn't know what he's doing out there. He's a lost Manning. So you all not appreciate Eli Manning. Then when you win a Super Bowl, then you're acting like nobody respected us, and nobody thought we could do it. But then next you know, when there's a couple of struggle seasons, you want to get rid of him again. Then he wins another Super Bowl. Oh, Eli Manning is the greatest thing in the world. Then after a couple of struggle seasons, he's a bum. Then it turns into, let's draft another quarterback in Daniel Jones. So when I listen to Giants fans want to say, wow, that's so wrong how the team did their quarterback when you treated your quarterback the same exact way. I know that's going to rub a lot of people the wrong way, but damn you. That's the plain reality of it. And please go back and check New York Sports Talk Radio and see if I'm making this up. Now, let's talk about the arguments for Eli Manning going to the Super Bowl. Going to the Hall of Fame. 2 Super Bowl victories, 42 and 46. Defeated the New England Patriots, the GOAT of all time, Tom Brady, the greatest coach of all time, Bill Belichick. He's a 2-time Super Bowl MVP in those same Super Bowls. Now, some people say that should be enough to get in. A good buddy of mine, Julio, said with the Super Bowls, he should get in. Now, if you take a look at that first Super Bowl, because people, if we're going to look at Ben Roethlisberger saying that he really didn't have a good Super Bowl the first time, he gets credit for that. Let's really examine Eli Manning in that Super Bowl. Yes, he made the famous play to David Tyree. The real MVP of that first Super Bowl was that Giants defensive line, led by Justin Tuck, who really should have been MVP, Michael Strahan, Osi Umenyiora, and I believe Matthias Kiwanuka might have been the other guy. But those 3 guys, or the Giants' defensive front, those 4 guys on that line dominated the New England Patriots, their offensive line. I mean, made mincemeat out of them. Tom Brady had no time to throw. And I felt those guys, namely Tuck, should have been the MVP of that first Super Bowl. I give Eli the credit. He did make the play after Brady had his Montana moment, drove him down the length of the field, and you thought it was a truly Joe Montana moment. You thought the Patriots were going to win the game. Eli, ice water in his veins, leads them back down the field. But to hold that team to 22 or 23 points less than what their average was during the season, you have to give credit to that defense. And I've always given credit to that defense, led by Justin Tuck, along with the future Hall of Famer Strahan, as well as Osi Umenyiora. So I thought that Giants defensive line really, really controlled the action, really controlled the line of scrimmage, the trenches, whatever you want to call it, as to why that game was the way it was in Super Bowl 42. So if that's the argument that people are going to say, well, Eli should be a Hall of Famer because he has 2 Super Bowls, he beat Tom Brady in both of them, he was a Super Bowl MVP. Okay, that's great, but let's look at his entire body of work. Now, Giants fans are going to tell you that Eli Manning had the most fourth quarter touchdown passes in the season in 2011, which was a season that he won a Super Bowl. He had 15. He tied the longest pass completion and touchdown for 99 yards. Again, another record. He has the most passing yards in a single postseason, 1,219. Again, that was 2011. So if you're saying these are all the pros as to why Eli Manning should be in the Hall of Fame, there you go. Now, if you want to take a look at some cons, some of the cons are, I just gave you season by season what the team finished and how they fared in the playoffs. Out of his career from 2004 to 2019, but if you want to take away 2004, let's strip that away because he hardly played that season, and let's strip away 2019. So let's look at 2005 through 2018. The Giants made the playoffs 6 times and missed the playoffs 8 times. So in full season, so 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. In those 14 seasons, when he played the entire season from beginning to end, not even counting being pulled by Coach Ben McAfee, Eli Manning missed the playoffs 8 times, only made the playoffs 6 times. And that's a Hall of Famer. But again, we're just throwing the stats out there. Eli Manning only has 4 Pro Bowls, 0 All-Pros, led the league in interceptions 3 times in his career. In 2007, he had 20, but that's negated by the Super Bowl run. In 2010, 25. And in 2013, 27 interceptions. His record as a starting quarterback is 117 to 117. That is a 500 quarterback record. Let me say this again. His record as a starter is 117 and 117. Now, is that a Hall of Fame quarterback who has a 500 record as a starter? A Hall of Fame quarterback who missed the playoffs more than he actually made the playoffs. But of course, that tends to be washed away by the Super Bowls. So again, he has missed the playoffs more than he made the playoffs. We're just putting all the facts out there. Another thing that you take into consideration when you look at a Hall of Famer, and I've always said this, a Hall of Famer is somebody when they played, were they considered top 2, top 3, maybe top 4 at their position at the time they played amongst their contemporaries? That's a legitimate question. So again, at the time when you played in your career, at the peak of your career, were you considered top 3, I would even squeeze top 4? Were you amongst your contemporaries? Now, we know quarterbacks are judged differently. For instance, in the 90s, you had Emmitt Smith and Barry Sanders. Depending on which aisle you stood on, you knew that these guys were the top 2 running backs in professional football. Either it was Emmitt Smith or Barry Sanders. You knew during the 90s, your top quarterbacks was pretty much where you figured Montana was fading out. You had Steve Young, Troy Aikman, Jim Kelly, Brett Favre. Those were the best quarterbacks in the league. Now, I know now with the way that the rules are skewed towards offenses, now you have an offensive explosion. You knew in those 90s, your best receivers in football were Jerry Rice, Michael Irvin, and Andre Reed. Sterling Sharp before the injuries, throwing maybe a Herman Moore. So you knew those were your top. So again, at the time you played, at the peak of your powers, at the peak of your position, were you the best player at that position at that time? And if you're really honest with yourself, the answer is no with Eli Manning. Because around the time he played at the peak of his powers, at the prime of his career, you had Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger, older brother Peyton Manning, Drew Brees was thrown in there, Brett Favre, you had Aaron Rodgers, eventually later on down the line you had Russell Wilson. Now, here's going to be some controversy for you, and you know I'm not even an Eagles fan. Before those Super Bowls, how many people were taking Eli Manning over Donovan McNabb? Just a question. Just a question here. Before that Super Bowl in 2007, how many people were taking Eli Manning over Donovan McNabb? Not many. Again, the Super Bowls tends to wash away a lot of stuff. But I just read to you weeks where the Eagles defeated the Giants in the playoffs. So if you base it off of head-to-head matchup, then Donovan McNabb had the edge over Eli Manning in the playoffs, not once, but twice. Just throwing it out there. So just something to kind of, just put it out there. I think at the peak or the height of the Michael Vick experience, I don't think there's people taking Eli Manning over Michael Vick. Now, I would take Eli Manning over Michael Vick any day of the week based on work ethic and everything that comes with it, but it does make you wonder. I would take Eli Manning based on that one playoff run over Tony Romo, but actually, if you take a look at it, Romo actually defeated Eli Manning in head-to-head matchups. So just throwing it out there. Just kind of throwing it out there. We're going to throw all the facts out there and let you make the best decision. Now, and another thing, too, to take into consideration about Hall of Famers, since we live in a world where a black athlete's past transgressions are not forgiven, DJ, cut the music for me. Wasn't Eli Manning implicated or involved selling fake memorabilia in 2017, I believe? Wasn't Eli Manning involved when he was sued civilly and there was a settlement out of court right before the beginning of the trial where him, the equipment manager, were involved in selling fake, or I don't know if it was not game worn, it was supposed to be game worn equipment, and he was selling it and the stuff was fake memorabilia. So y'all here scamming people. And yet people want to sweep that under the rug. So do you want a Hall of Famer who has that on his resume, being involved in selling fake memorabilia? That's not a good look for the Hall of Fame. Since we held that against T.O., since T.O., his issues with the locker room and issues that he had, that should have kept him out of the Hall of Fame for all those years when he clearly should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. So if we're bringing up past transgressions, let's not forget, again, that Eli Manning was implicated in selling fake memorabilia. Just throwing it out there. You decide for yourself. So we're going to let you make the decision. I know I probably upset some Giants fans on making this broadcast, but that's what we do at Chin Check Radio. We give the hard-hitting opinions and just something to think about as to whether Eli Manning is in fact a Hall of Famer. If you want my opinion, I don't think he is a Hall of Famer, but I think he is going to get in, and here's the reasons why. Is number one, because of the Super Bowls. He's going to get in because of the Super Bowls. That seems to be the criteria now. You win the Super Bowl, you kind of get into Hall of Fame, and they're going to pull out the longevity card. My thing is with longevity is this. You can be average and mediocre for a long time, but you can build stats up. The next thing you know, okay, the stats build. So that's where longevity comes into play here. He's going to get in because of the Super Bowl. They're going to tell you longevity, finish whatever top 10 in passing yards or whatever. But again, that's based on longevity, not necessarily high quality of play. Number two, he plays in the New York market. The New York market, naturally, you get much more press. You get much more exposure. The news media coverage is 24/7. So I think he's going to get in just based on being in the New York market. And if you don't believe me, ask Joe Namath, because why in the hell is Joe Namath the Hall of Famer? Go look at his threw more interceptions and touchdowns. And the reason why he's in the Hall of Fame, because he guaranteed to win the Super Bowl III, again, against the heavily favored Colts. So that's why he's in the Hall of Fame. For instance, of course, in New York, you do get more exposure than you would get in other places. Take the great Lawrence Taylor. Lawrence Taylor, clearly one of the best defensive players of all time. Easily, probably the greatest defensive player of all time. But there was a guy in Kansas City by the name of Derek Thomas who was probably just as good as LT, but he tends to be forgotten. Why is that? Kansas City market versus the New York market. We have a New York Yankee who got into the Baseball Hall of Fame as a unanimous selection. That was Myron Rivera. Derek Jeter got in the Hall of Fame by one vote, but Ken Griffey Jr., he wasn't unanimous, and he was a better player than both of them combined. So that's just being in the New York market, so you get more. So Eli Manning is going to get into the Hall of Fame because of the Super Bowls, because of the, quote, longevity, because of being in the New York market. They're going to push for that. And lastly, a Manning is almost considered like a Kennedy in the political circles. The Manning name is considered royalty. So he's going to get into the Hall of Fame just because his name is Manning. And it's definitely something that's going to be worthwhile. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer based on everything that I just read to you, if we're going to go by strict criteria. But I do think he is going to get into the Hall of Fame. So just throwing our opinion out there. We definitely enjoyed tonight's broadcast. This is Chin Check Radio signing off. And definitely leave your comments as well, because I know you are going to have a lot of them. Signing off. Take care.